The Monday, June 10th, 2013, Washougal City Council Workshop Meeting. Rose, could you call the roll for us, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky. Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Thank you. We understand Councilmember Polinsky is running just a few minutes late. I would like to take a moment before we get started and have Jennifer introduce our newest employee.
Oh.
So, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Wow!
We anticipated this, yeah.
This is Theo Gomez, and today is his first day as our new
I'm sorry,
IT
what,
manager.
the first name?
First
again?
name?
Theo.
Theo.
And,
Like
he's.
a cat.
Yeah.
Police station.
Yes, the police station had a cat named Theo, so
Oh,
they were all, that was their first choice, of course.
yeah.
But, he's coming all the way from Arizona, and we're very thankful that he's here and ready to go. He's already jumped in, feet first, and, we're getting going, so. We can just go around, you know Dave, this is, Councilmember Joyce Lindsay, Councilmember Connie Jo Freeman. Yeah, you're gonna go ahead and text it. Jennifer McDaniel, Dave Shoemaker, Mayor Sean Gard, Karen Plinsky, Paul Greenlee, and then Brent Boger.
Where's the umbrella?
Nice wine.
Yeah. Welcome.
Well, I look forward to working here. Beautiful place.
Well, welcome on board. It obviously got a little bit of applause here, but trust me, in 2 weeks, cause us to give you standing ovations. Maybe give you a little more than 2 weeks.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Are there any members of the public that would like to address council before we get started this evening? No, you're not one. You're on the agenda. Oh, nice try.
Ah,
Anyone besides Melissa that would like to comment to council? Okay, not your only opportunity tonight, hopefully, but with that, Melissa, we will go to you. Come on up and join us, please.
Come on down.
Here, or?
Come on up to the table if you would.
yeah, we changed up the format since you were here last.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is one of my quarterly reports for the RTC board, and I handed out, you have a letter
Yes.
that was given to us in May, at our May meeting, from the 17th and 18th and 20th district, a couple of the representatives wanting us to reconsider our support for the CRC project in its current form. And we haven't done anything with this letter. We haven't discussed it yet because they gave it to us, and we haven't put that on the agenda to discuss, so just give it to you guys. And if you have any feedback, preference, you can email it to me or contact Olympia.
Did we send the RTC our resolution? Then maybe we should,
Directed to the lit.
I think
maybe
we
we should
did.
give one to Melissa.
But probably, we sent it probably to the staff.
Hmm?
I'm not sure, did you get a resolution distributed to the members?
No?
Okay, we'll loop back and find out.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
all right. Can I ask, what was your?
We said the same thing, please, not in the current form.
Okay,
We said it in a
Current
lot,
design.
we said it in a lot different wording. That didn't talk about pork, it talked more about the effects of potential bridge and tolling and the 205 and
Right.
and our residents and.
yeah, okay, good. Okay. Our meetings are now broadcast on CVTV, so woo-hoo if you're excited, but I
Midnight
think it's
viewing.
like at 1 o'clock in the morning that you can watch them. We're not high on the priority list. We've started a executive search process. Dean Lookingbill, our executive leader, is retiring in September, I believe. So we have hired Prothman for the search firm. and gave them a budget of $30,000 to do an executive search, and hopefully we'll have somebody by the end of July, picked on that. And then Rose was so gracious to put up this map. We had this discussion on the proposed 2010 federal urban area boundary from the 2010 U.S. Census, urbanized area and federal aid urban area boundary. And it confused all of us. We don't know where they came up with some of their numbers. But anyway, it's hard to see on there. Can I, like, Washougal?
And
We do have copies of that for our Dropbox.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you do. As you can see, anything in green is the only thing the RTC could make recommendations on. So I just spoke for Washougal and said that the Washougal River Road stays rural. That's not an urban area. Okay. The biggest conversation we had was over here in the Dollars Corners area, where they're changing that to urban. This whole area, I can't point.
Is it that up there by Battleground?
Up there by Battleground, yeah.
It's on
that area.
10th and
They're making 502 a more, excuse me, urban area instead of using the 503. And there's not that much growth out there. So we were like, why? How are you getting your numbers? And they couldn't come up with an answer for that. So we told them how we felt, and just the rest of it looked okay. But the main concern was the Dollar Corners out there by Battleground and making sure the Washougal River area stays rural. And we don't have much else going on.
What's our advantage of staying rural, or is it an advantage?
Let's see. How is it? It says the urban area boundaries are relevant in establishing the federal function classification of streets because the UAB delineates the boundary between rural and urban functional classifications. So I guess it would be for funding, to improve the roads if you have the growth out there to support it, would be.
Well, for the most part, at least on the River Road portion, it looks like all the other areas that are in green on there, at least for Washougal, match our urban growth boundaries.
Right.
Yeah, and the River Road certainly isn't contained in that, so.
Yeah, because it's so narrow too,
It'd
and
be
that's.
tough for them to call it urban when
Yeah.
the state and everybody in the county has already said that it's gonna remain rural for.
Yeah.
And
And it was,
as was explained in the meeting, kind of floated past very quickly, funding for urban roads is much more competitive,
yeah,
that you're more likely to get in a competitive grant rural money than you are urban money. There's also issues, it's not clear whether designating it as an urban highway means that when you do improvements, you have to do bike lanes and sidewalks.
yes,
Putting bike lanes and sidewalks on Washougal River Road is an obvious impossibility.
exactly. Thank you for adding that. That was, yeah, important.
A question that, Dave, that area up north and east of
Battleground.
34th Street, up on Mount Norway,
Right?
I think it's zoned combination of light industrial and highway commercial.
It's employment
Employment.
zoning, I think. Employment center.
Okay. Does this classification that the feds have pose a problem for that?
They're classifying specific roads, right?
Yes,
Got a list, and
roads.
so they're classifying specific roads, but yeah, I have.
Not
Not
areas.
Not areas, but we will loop back. We work in close coordination with the RTC, but we'll loop back to make sure.
Okay, and what prompted the question was, Paul indicated that urban area funds for road development are a lot easier to get.
No,
the other
he
way
said
around.
the opposite. Rural is.
Rural, I'm sorry.
Yeah, rural is.
Misunderstood, okay.
There's a lot of competition for the urban
Yeah,
as versus the rural.
happy to hear it.
Yeah. So that's about all I have, really. We're kind of a quiet group.
You meet monthly, right?
Yes,
That big crowd is quiet. That's a huge group.
it is. It is pretty quiet. There's a lot of them that don't show up. None of, only the locals. This month, we had Representative Pike and Orcutt show up, and they were the only two from, it's Camas, Washougal, Vancouver, Ridgefield that show up. The other districts don't show up, even though it shows a big board. I would say it's about this size.
When you're in regional transportation, there's no money for regional transportation. It makes for short
Exactly.
meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, they're in session, it's special session too.
The representative from Metro in
Mhm.
Portland shows up,
She shows up. Yeah.
and the representative from Skamania County shows up pretty consistently.
Who's that? I don't,
I can't remember his name, but you know where I sit back in the
Yeah.
audience. He's always kind of diagonally right there from me.
okay, okay. 'Cause I can't, okay.
Other questions, comments from Melissa?
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
I mean, we have discussions of stuff, but nothing.
I'm curious about this this letter came in on May 3rd. What was your last meeting?
June.
Did you meet in May?
That's when we got it, was at the end of the
Okay.
meeting, yeah,
And you've already met for June?
yeah. And we
But
didn't do.
They didn't feel
anything
that
with
there
it.
was a need to discuss it, huh?
No,
I'm surprised.
they didn't put it on
is
the
such a
agenda.
Passionate topic.
I know, that's why we're just kind of staying neutral.
Waiting.
I mean, on the agenda, I can show you the agenda, but it's not on there.
Okay.
You say they're staying neutral, but it's basically the letter asks the RTC to
To
reconsider its support.
support, right.
So you're not neutral at this time.
Pardon?
You're not neutral at this time. You're in support of the CRC.
Yeah, what I mean by neutral is we haven't changed our stance.
Okay.
So that's as far as I know. I haven't seen a new letter proposed
Somebody
from
could
the
put it on
RTC.
ask for it to get on the agenda.
Pardon?
No one's asked to get it on the agenda. It could be requested.
I can ask Bill about that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
When's your next meeting?
July.
It's the first Tuesday of the month.
Okay. The big mystery about state funding might be.
Might be resolved.
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
It better be, because the fiscal year ends July 1st.
Mhm.
Any other items for Melissa?
Not I.
Melissa, thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay. Wish I had some hot topic or something.
That's okay.
I feel we have enough going on.
Clothing store.
Alrighty. You guys have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Melissa.
Yeah, bye.
New business, community development, setting a public hearing for the Parks Capital Facilities Plan.
Good evening.
Hi.
This agenda item is is on tonight's consent agenda to set the public hearing for June 24th related to the update to the Parks Capital Facility Plan. Suzanne Grover is here tonight. She has a slideshow presentation to go through. as soon as I get it up there. Kind of walk through proposed amendments to the plan itself. Except we're not going to start on chapter 6.
Last page. You could just fast forward.
There we go.
So how do you just tap?
Just tap it.
Okay. I'm tapping it. So I'm just going to go over a brief history really quick. In 2006, the City Council approved the Park Comprehensive Plan crafted by MIG that complied with the Growth Management Act and qualified Washougal for state grants through the Recreation and Conservation Office. In 2010, the Parks Department surveyed Washougal residents to gather current data on the expectations and desires for local recreation. And from that information, the Washougal Parks Department worked closely with an student intern, to update the plan and reflect modern recreation goals. And 2013, staff presents both the both the Parks Board's version and the Planning Commission version, which has changes, to the City Council for review and approval. And I'm just going to explain some of the changes that we made. There's grammatical and spelling corrections throughout the entire document. We updated charts, graphs, maps, and park photographs to be reflective of the existing conditions. And we went chapter by chapter and assessed the content for accuracy, any new additions to park properties, and we had some updates resulting from the public requests as collected from the 2010 public survey process. And if I don't mention a chapter, it just means that we didn't have anything specifically other than the grammatical corrections to take care of. Chapter 2, we made a delineation between natural parks such as Kerr Park and undeveloped open space such as lands that are left natural as a requirement of the subdivision, which are then deeded to the city. Undeveloped open space properties are not identified specifically in this plan. However, the Parks Department pays for maintenance of these pieces as needed. This delineation between natural parks and undeveloped open space is made in the tables and charts throughout the rest of the Park Comprehensive Plan document. And recognition of the school district facilities is clarified in that the city cannot calculate school and land in their facilities as existing assets in consideration for state grants. Also in Chapter 2, we took the survey information from 2005 and supplemented it by 2010 survey findings, and updated the sports group questionnaire with current numbers for leagues and teams, and that data changes constantly. We skipped to Chapter 4 and the clarification of MIG's example of the city of Edmonds as a comparison to Washougal for budget revenue purposes.
Isn't Edmonds a little bigger than we are, a little bit more?
Yeah, that's what we explained in the document.
Okay.
They weren't very specific about that, so
Okay.
we added a little
MIGs.
clarification. Sorry?
MIGs stands for?
More Iacafano. And
It's a company.
yeah, it's the company that did the first comp plan. So
Thank you. I thought it was some secret government code.
No,
They've
not
been
this
doing that
time.
to me for a year and a half now.
Well, also Edmonds is a much more affluent city than
It
we
is.
are.
I know they used Edmonds as an example for budgetary reasons, and we just kind of defined how their Washougal and Edmonds is so different. And
Except for water.
I have no idea why they
Lots
used
of,
Edmonds.
lots of water areas.
We augmented the conditions under which the city of Washougal considers accepting private parks as public asset. We also added some language suggesting the protection of the park's operations and maintenance budget from impact by the Washougal Memorial Cemetery. And since then, a small subsidy was added to the cemetery through the general fund. So it may be irrelevant, but it's still, we left it in the document. Chapter 5 is the biggest chapter for any changes, so there's about 5 pages here that we have to go through. The assessment of all parks and adjustments of those properties to match the best classification. Executed the distinction between natural parks and undeveloped open space as mentioned previously. All parks descriptions and possible design concepts are embellished so that the options for development and funding are open. We replaced language for Heartwood Park as NP6 since we acquired it in 2011. And we changed Campen Creek Park from neighborhood park from neighborhood park to natural park, since it fits the character of a natural park a little bit closer. And we corrected names and information of parklands in or near Washougal that are owned by other jurisdictions. In Chapter 5, we also added Pendleton baseball fields and Fishback Stadium to other park sites. We added RV parking language to other outdoor recreation facilities. We updated the off-leash dog area and community garden to reflect the work accomplished over the last several years, and we refined the indoor recreation facilities language because there was so much of a desire by the community to have an indoor recreation center with a pool. So.
Yeah, don't we then? Then we wouldn't have to drive all the way over to you-know-what.
Yeah.
Chapter 5, we also added language covering hybrid or new recreation opportunities such as pickleball or disc golf, and a guideline for considerations that we would take into consideration prior to implementing such an activity into our parks. We refined the off-street trail system language and proposed trail corridors, and with consistent with the 2005 document, the update focused specifically on off-street trails, since sidewalks are a transportation function. We also improved the Columbia River Trail language, including updated information about SR14 pedestrian tunnel was not in there. The possible link between Steamboat Landing and the Port of Camas Washougal Marina properties, which is under debate at this time. We updated information on the Rails with Trails program because we implemented the quiet zone. It's not feasible, but we left it in as information.
What is that exactly? We just put a trail alongside the tracks?
There are some communities throughout Washington that they work in conjunction with the railroad, and they build a trail alongside and have agreements, and they share maintenance. But I would say that would probably be a low traffic or a low speed.
There's also the Rails to Trails program, which involves abandoned railroad right away, but we don't have any of that.
No. So.
Okay.
Chapter 5, we refined language on the Washougal River Trail. The residents, we had 2 planning commission meetings, and residents raised concerns about having a trail that went right along the Washougal River in this area. So they suggested acquisition or on-street routes instead of an easement. And because of this, there was a section in MIG's version of the master plan that called for exercising the option on the 15-foot easement, so we pulled that out of there. And the Planning Commission was still a little concerned about that area of town, so they crafted specific on-street routes through this particular neighborhood. And those recommendations went back to the Park Board for review, and the Park Board voted to decline those recommendations and go with their original document that they proposed.
Excuse me, does the original go back to an easement along the water?
It makes mention of it, but it's a proposed trail easement. It would be something that we would look at if there was a sale or
development
agreement
within that
or
area,
something.
and we could go after it. This is actually the biggest issue when we're looking at the update of this plan, that the difference between the Park Board recommendation and the Planning Commission recommendation. I called it out in your agenda as Exhibit B and Exhibit C. There are 2 different maps, and Exhibit B was the Park Board recommendation that had the trail system that goes along the water, and then Exhibit C was what the Planning Commission recommended. Basically pulls that trail system off the waterfront and routes it on the on-street system through that portion of the city. This is at their Planning Commission specific recommendation is to adopt the plan as it is in front of you with their proposed map. We're presenting both the Planning Commission's as well as the Park Board recommendation on the trail system.
What was their thinking of making that change?
That there would never be the opportunity to obtain a trail easement along those properties.
Is this the same swimming hole?
This is on the north side of the Washougal River. Yeah, if I can bear with me here, I can switch over. I think.
Well, while you're getting there, let me make a comment. there are 2 planning commission members who that easement would go through their backyard. There is 1 city council member who that easement would go through his backyard. I will probably recuse myself from this particular issue, but I just wanted to mention that there are 2 planning commission members for whom that trail is effectively in their backyard. The other thing worth saying is that's floodway, which is an interesting kind of legal designation because the Washougal River is navigable water, and everything between the mean high water lines is public access. So it is conceivable that you could put a trail below the high water line and it would be public access. It would not.
It would be seasonal.
Hmm?
Be seasonal, if you put it below.
Well,
Depends on river flow.
yeah. You'd have to get Army Corps and ecology to sign off on it.
Yeah, it presents its own set of challenges for development from an environmental standpoint, but not anything that's insurmountable. It's important to note that the logic that they used, again, along Shepherd Road, you can see that we had the trail system that went along the water, and they suggested that move back to Shepherd Road. In that case, I think that makes sense. There's really no place to put a trail in that area. The properties are just not deep enough along Washougal River Road. But when you move over to this side, it's important. I'm not sure if highlighting works in this. I'm sorry. Some of the properties that we already have easements across. We have conditional acquisition of property through there that we need to have it on our facility plan. We've had some discussion in a legal realm that by having it in the plan identified that we've accomplished that, so we can actually execute those trail systems in there. But we've already got it just east of the Washougal River Road there. We have easement through there to get us almost down to right where you can see the kind of zigzags right by WP3 there to get off of that property. Because you can see it's along the waterfront there. We've left it there because we have the easements there, and then that's where it jumps off the waterfront back to the road system. So that of the two, the recommendations from the Park Board and the Planning Commission are consistent with this one, except for this one issue.
Let's go ahead with the presentation. If you would, make some notes, because I know we've got a couple things we want to come back to in the presentation itself. So.
In Chapter 5, we also created language defining the Camp Creek Corridor Loop, which includes Kerr Park and Eldridge Park trail systems as a separate trail system from the Steigerwald Trail Route, which in the original plan it was merged together. And investigation into the probability of securing an approved crossing over BNSF tracks and State Route 14 proved insurmountable. Typo correction. Sorry, this is a new one for you too, Mitch. There's a sentence that says connection between Hathaway Elementary School and Hathaway Park. It's supposed to be Gauze Elementary School because Hathaway Park and Hathaway Elementary School right across the street from one another. So, and then we improved language for water trails and inclusion of a water trail, Washougal River water trail map, listing public access as an appendix to the document. And in Chapter 6, we changed the costs that are in the charts to reflect current values. And the Finance Department assisted in creating more realistic parks budgeting scenarios based on strong to weak revenue growth and city support. And the last thing is the entire section regarding Metropolitan Park District was moved back to the appendices. That's all.
So the recommended action to, for, at least for tonight, is just to set the public hearing for June 24th at 7 p.m. By approval of the consent agenda this evening.
So the discussion on the properties to the north side of Hathaway Park, I'm assuming that our two planning commissioners did not recuse themselves from the discussion.
No.
Okay.
And their argument is that we would not have, or the potential of acquiring that property. Really, through development, we're not gonna get more development in that area, and so that makes sense. But we do purchase easements from time to time, and that we could approach property owners in order to accomplish that.
Well, worst case, can we not take the property?
That would be an action that council could look at, yes.
Have we,
Eminent domain?
yeah, have we checked with Don to make sure that there's not a imperfection in their action that they potentially should have recused themselves on it?
I haven't, but I'd be happy to.
I was under the impression that Shoreline was public property.
Not the waterway is the public property. Shoreline jurisdiction goes 200 feet back, and that's not all considered public.
That would be a taking.
So on that map, are we talking about that section where the blue line stops and starts? That there's no blue lines, that,
Yeah.
Basically where the X's are on there.
The X's are removing that portion of the trail. The blue line is where the, looks like it got a little fragmented there. I apologize, that should connect, but that blue
Oh.
line is moving around.
like from Washougal River Road to where it says WP3. There's no
That's
blue
along
line
the
there.
water. That's along the river.
It goes into the river,
Well, not into the river, along the shoreline.
the shoreline.
Yes. And we've had developments already occur within those areas, and we have easement across those areas already.
So Exhibit C is from which group?
Exhibit C is from the Planning Commission.
Okay, so C, and they have their, we're talking about the blue lines as being the trail proposals.
On the Planning Commission one, or excuse me, on the park one.
That doesn't have any blue lines.
Yeah, it's
Exhibit B is the
parks.
Board, and it goes, it doesn't,
Doesn't show it.
which one is? Where is their proposal?
This is it, and it goes right along the water.
Okay.
They're basically the same maps, it's just of that area that I X'd out the trail portion and then put the blue new trail is what the Planning Commission
Oh.
wants.
Okay.
So if you remove all those layers off the map, that's what the park board recommendation is.
Okay. Thank you.
Suzanne, can you share with us what the Parks Board concern was about routing the bicycle traffic through the neighborhoods?
Well, they felt that since sidewalks are a function of a transportation issue, that would not be their purview, and they wouldn't be working directly with that type of a trail system. So that.
It was a bureaucratic pass more than a strong objection.
Well, they feel that perhaps that someday they might be able to get a trail through there, but I mean, they're not looking to do any property takes or.
Do you share their confidence that we might someday get a trail through the?
Well, I know we have little sections of it here and there, and I know that there are some willing property owners on occasion that, whether I think we're gonna have a complete trail through there, no, I don't think so.
Okay,
But I think that there might be an opportunity there to get people down to the river through a section of trail.
thank you. Thanks.
So you mean more of a public access?
Well, I mean, I would hope it would be a trail, but there are trail sections that go for a little bit of a distance along the river, and that's what I would hope, at least we could get some sort of a trail semblance across there. But I know how people are, and I know they're not all in agreement all the time, so.
So here comes a question, put you two on the spot. I understand that you've got two different advisory boards that are giving you differing recommendations going forward. but as our parks manager and community development director, where do you two think this thing should lie?
You want to go first, or you want me to?
Well, if you go first, then I might not have to go.
I tend to agree with a mixture of both. I think that the recommendation to remove it off of the Shepherd Road area makes sense to me. As we move east of Washougal River Road, I think it makes sense to keep it along the water, and that is the we have a connection there. We almost had some sort of connection across at some point when we discussed that. Who knows that may or may not ever come back again. But it does lend itself better to a trail, an amenity, if you will. And we've already obtained easement area in that area on both sides of that stretch. We already have it in place. So I agree that development is not going to occur that would allow that to happen, but we may get it at it some other way.
Yes.
Suzanne, would you be in agreement with that one?
Yes.
Good.
And I'm an optimist that, we can't, if we have an opportunity to build a trail along here, we won't be able to use any of our park impact fees. So I'm an optimist that perhaps there will be an opportunity in the future that maybe a section or, a group of neighbors will get together and actually see the benefit of having a trail back there. So
Why are we precluded from using park impact fees?
if it's not identified in our park comp plan, then.
Gotcha.
And
Jim?
Can I say one thing, Your Honor? We did apply for a grant, and I believe it was an STP grant through RTC for Shepherd Road. And I believe that was in 2010, where there'd be a series of retaining walls and things like that along Shepherd Road on the water side. So it is feasible through there. It looked like a pretty promising grant as far as connectivity to Camas and their trail system as well. So I wouldn't just discount on that piece.
Was that between the road and the houses?
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, I agree with that. On road, what this removal is on the other side, south of the houses, on the water.
Right.
That's what you're talking about?
No.
Okay, yeah. So.
Yeah.
And I know there are some sections of Shepherd Road, this doesn't really get into the trail system, but in your open space areas, there are sections of Shepherd Road on the south side of the roadway, between the roadway and the river, that would appear clearly too narrow to build on. Have we ever approached anybody about purchasing those or donations to the city to just maintain in green space along the river? Do we own any of those now other than the joint kind of sort of maintenance of the Sandy swimming hole?
I don't think, I could check the map over here, but I don't think we own any property until we get to Sandy.
The north side of the river at approximately 12th Street is actually owned by Washington DFW. East of kind of the last house on the south side of Shepherd Road, there's a long piece of undeveloped. That's actually owned by DFW.
And it's undeveloped really for a reason.
Yes.
Okay.
And let me just say, of course, I would need to not conduct a guided tour and impose my opinions, but if anyone wants access back there, come see me. You can come through my yard and walk along the river. Go ahead.
I thought we had discussed trying to purchase land up to that area that turned into Camas, right near, just west of Sandy Swimming Hole. I was looking at Jim and I was saying, didn't we discuss that since I've been here?
Yeah, that was part of that.
But we didn't succeed.
That grant application, I think we looked into all of those areas there, but
was a no-go because why?
Well, it was a no-go because we didn't get funding.
We didn't get
Oh,
funding.
it wasn't about Camus's ownership or the property owners?
No, but those, yeah, those grants can be resurrected, that's all my thought process is, so.
Yeah, we do still have the negotiations going with the property to the north
Right.
at the Sandy swimming hole.
Hmm.
So those are still ongoing.
The parking area?
Parking.
Good.
In regard to Chapter 5, 5.3, the addition of RV parking language to other outdoor recreation facilities. What does that, in reality, what does that do for us by making that designation?
There it is, second line.
The addition of RV parking language, is that what
Mhm.
you're asking about?
Does that give us other capabilities? Does that offer other opportunities for individuals?
I think it does. I think it's included as a recreation facility, so we would be able to, if we were to develop a park that had an RV element to it, that would qualify for funding.
And right now, Mitch, that's only allowed in
Commercial, yeah, highway commercial.
just in highway commercial?
Yeah.
So we have no spots like that right now?
No, we'd have to make changes to the zoning.
I know the port allows RV there, that's the only place in our area. Huh?
This would be an actual designation as RV. I don't think we've ever defined them as that, and
There are no hookups there.
yeah. I mean,
Are they just?
it's a
let-
parking lot that they allow folks during the week.
I see.
So potentially that could open up areas in other areas of the city in our park areas and recognize that as other outdoor recreational facilities. Is that correct?
We'd have to, no, we probably wouldn't have to, because it depends on the property. If we acquired it and implemented it as parks open space, then it would capture whatever we have in this. We wouldn't have to change the zoning at that time.
But would it need to be considered as a city park or open space
Yes.
in order for it to be
Yes.
allowed?
Yes.
Okay. Could that happen to, if this change goes through, can that happen to existing parks as well? Could you turn
We could.
half of Hathaway Park into an RV park?
We could turn around and look at that, you bet.
Okay.
That would be attractive.
Other questions?
Travelers.
Okay, so consent tonight, we will be setting the hearing for the following,
Yeah.
the following meeting.
Yeah. I don't think that we're on the workshop that night.
We'll just
unless
go
you-
into it.
Yeah.
Part of that process, Mitch, are all of the homeowners along the area that we're talking about in regard to Washougal River, are they papered again for
No,
the potential?
nope.
Do we want to do that? I would say that's a pretty big decision depending on
What do you mean
where
by
council may,
papered?
letters letting him know that we'll be taking the item under consideration.
We can look at doing that.
Keep
Yeah.
in mind, during that meeting on the 24th, you're gonna be asked to pick one or the other, either the Parks Board or the Planning Commissions or some hybrid or some other something.
Yeah, we followed proper procedure for notice and before the work sessions and the city council, or excuse me, planning commission hearing. We had no one show up for that, and, but if it's the desire of the council to notify those folks, we can definitely do that.
We're probably talking less than 50 properties, aren't we?
Well, probably what I would end up doing is getting the folks on Shepherd as well, because it affects the changes there.
I would be thinking you'd be going Third Avenue all the way up
Yes.
and pass through to the city
I
line.
don't know how many it would be, but it's a pretty easy list to generate and put together.
Let's generate.
Okay? Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
if there's no other questions, we're gonna keep Mitch.
Well, on that, what I'd like to know is the actual feasibility of building a trail on public trust land. That to me is gonna be the crucial question.
Building a trail on public trust.
You know, in the
High water.
high
You
water.
mean floodplain?
Floodplain, yeah.
Well, floodway.
Floodway, whatever.
Yeah, it's an engineering issue. I mean, we have no rise that we'd have to look at, and flat work typically, I would think that they would be willing to look at, but we get a lot of structures that go in there not on the up and up that cause problems when it does flood. So, but yeah, I think that's an engineering issue, a feasibility issue. I think it's definitely allowed. It would be allowed, but it's an engineering effort that would need to take place to make it come to fruition. I think may be tough. Okay, I'm going to jump into miscellaneous code amendments here. Again, this is another item that's on your consent agenda for this evening to set the public hearing for June 24th at 7 p.m. And I'll just jump right in. There are 35 proposed code amendments that you have. They were provided in your Dropbox, and I sent out two today. There's a spreadsheet which portions of I'll go over within this, but as well as all the other code changes that you had. We are adding new language regarding sprinklers for townhouses, model homes. We talked about some fire impact fee reductions, some new notice provision language, as well as post-decision review and changes for accessory buildings. We're also changing language to be consistent with state law related to land division, investing, and expenditures of impact fees, as well as a proposed change for the time frame for submittal of the school capital facility plan. And the majority of the changes, though, are really clarifying language and correction of errors and removing some redundancies throughout that. As part of this presentation, all of these were recommended as approved by the Planning Commission. We, at their hearing, we had no one, again, show up. We did provide notice to the building industry as well as the realtor industry. And again, we didn't get any comments. That's not to say that they won't show up at the public hearing on the 24th. I'm just going to touch on what I believe are really kind of the substantive changes, the new language and things of that sort. But if you have any questions on any specific code change, I'll be happy to answer any of those questions. So jumping right into it, didn't know if
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think this is something that goes from my computer. Is Theo still here? It goes from my computer to my iPad, and it looks fine. Then it gets onto a newer iPad, and it tends to shrink up a bit. But
So maybe you should ask for
can
the
I blow?
newer iPad.
Yeah, see, I can't do that. I can't zoom on this. The first one I'd like to talk about is, and I may let Ron talk more about, is item number two and item number 3. This is new code language defining automatic fire sprinkler systems and model homes under the International Fire Code. And that's really to facilitate the next proposed code change, which is new language requiring fire sprinkler systems to be installed in townhomes and model homes.
Not all townhomes.
Not all townhomes, yes. And
What's the reason for installing them in a model home?
There's two reasons. One is to kind of align ourselves with Camas as we work towards this consolidation, but more importantly, it's a way for public outreach to show them. There'll be the model home will have a sprinkler system in there. It'll be all opened up, so when people walk through, they can see the plumbing, they can see how non-invasive the fixtures are, and just kind of gives them a better idea that what a sprinkler system looks like and how it operates.
I seem to recall that Camus's ordinance aroused some controversy years ago, did it not? Or am I confusing it with some other situation? Because I didn't think it was, didn't they require sprinklers in all homes, new homes?
No, they have quite a few standards that we don't have, dead-end streets and some other things. That they have a lot of their homes are sprinklered. I think it's up to 1,400 now of their homes, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
Narrow streets, those kind of things will trigger it.
Yeah, except in some instances it's required.
Yes, narrow streets would be required, a gated community is required, those things that they have.
Okay.
If there's not enough water pressure available, then it's required.
Square footage of home?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
if we don't have the water to match the square footage.
And if I could, kind of the model ordinance on this is shoreline. There was we had an AWC seminar on this, I think, 4 years ago. And what they did was they said, if you put a sprinkler in a house, you can cut the width of your street down. And the development community jumped on that, and they were all in favor of it. Because it means you can get one more house in every 2 acres.
Who paid for it? The developer?
Buyer of the new home.
Whoever buys the homes?
The buyer?
Whoever
They paid
buys
for
the
that?
home, but
Even though it's mandatory?
retrofit is a
Nobody's gonna
couple.
give it to you for free. It's all in
Well,
the price.
it's an option. I mean, they could, when they do their plat for their subdivision, they can have wide streets and no fire sprinklers, or they can have narrow streets and fire sprinklers.
That's not what we're proposing. This doesn't have affect any change on our
Yeah.
engineering standards.
Okay.
Okay. The next, item 4 is, this was a request by the school district, Washougal and Camas school districts, to change the submittal requirements for their capital facility plan update, moving it from a 2-year cycle to a 4-year cycle. This brings us consistent with the county. The county shifted to a 4-year cycle 2 years ago. And the school districts have said that they don't need, their existing capital facility plans will allow them to continue for over the course of the next 2 years, but it's a considerable cost to put those capital facility plans together and bring those back every 2 years. This would help us be consistent with the other districts as well. And that's both from the Camas School District and the Washougal School District requested that proposed change. There is some other language in other municipalities that talk about it at the will of council when they see fit, and we just felt like moving it from a 2-year to a 4-year made the most sense to us. Another one for Ron here. Item number 12 is an impact fee reduction. It's new code language that it's actually existing state law now that allows emergency, the portion of your impact fee for emergency medical services to be, we don't collect the impact fee for that, so it's actually a reduction when they have a.
Right, it's an RCW now that, well, you weigh how many EMS calls you go on and how many fire calls we go on, so it's almost an 80-20, 80 EMS and 20 fire. So what I put in there was a reduction of 20% in their fire impact fees if they sprinkler their home, and that's a requirement that we have to offer something, but we just had to do the math and figure out how much a reduction would be.
Do they have to sprinkler the entire home, or is that one, I know we've heard you mention before that just sprinkling kitchens, that type of thing is a huge savings potentially because of the percentage of fires.
Right, no, this would be, if the home is going to be sprinklered, all of it has to be sprinklered. If they choose just to sprinkler their kitchen, which I advocate.
Doesn't affect it.
It doesn't affect it.
Okay.
And the cost of that is about $100. It's about $502
or 4,
something like that for fire impact fees. So it'd be a savings of about $100 to the homeowner.
Okay. Moving on, the next item 24 is.
Wait a second. 17.
I'm not sure if I have it on here, but I can go to my book.
Okay.
I've got it right here, if you want.
This is an esoteric question of a land use lawyer, and I just wanted to, I was surprised that basically the provision says that if a government agency comes in and puts a street in, that'll result in the subdivision of land. There's no provision like that in state law. Have you done an analysis whether we can do that?
Oh, I've seen it. In all my years at Clark County, we did it. We looked at it, and it was upheld. I don't know how many times that where you had a division of land. If that portion on the other side of the road still met current zoning, it's an exemption from plating, but it still had to meet current zoning.
Well, I think it's a great idea, and I'm surprised it's not in state law, but, yeah, if you're comfortable
And
with
what's this section in particular is, it's a melding of two sections. None of this language really is new. It's just, it was in one section, and then it was in another section, so I'm basically just getting it into one section of exemptions, and then the language is still the same.
I wish maybe another city actually could add something like that to their code. Okay.
Okay, back to number 20, item 24. This is a change in the commercial districts for service station, to change them in the highway commercial district from a conditional use permit to a permitted use outright. Highway commercial district is our highest intense use commercial designation that we have. It's not along East Street, it's only out on SR 14. But we don't need to go through a public hearing for a service station in those areas. At least that's what our proposal is, would change that from a conditional use to a permitted use outright. Still requires site plan review, and
There's still other agencies that deal with the underground storage tank.
oh yes, yeah, absolutely, we don't address that under that. The item 25 is an addition to the use prohibitions within the town center districts for wireless monopoles. We haven't had a new wireless monopole in the city in years, but this was just we already have two within the core, or one within the core, one within West Village, and so we just didn't want to have another one pop up in the middle of our downtown, so we added that as the prohibition.
Is that a cell tower?
Yeah.
We
Tower
call them
itself.
cell towers,
Yeah.
okay. Never heard it called
Wireless monopole.
monopole. How about you?
Item 30, you'll probably recall Mr. and Mrs. Kelly submitted a request to you about accessory buildings within the front yards. This is an item that it started out a little bit bigger than this, but Planning Commission's recommendation was just to basically change it to allow accessory buildings to be constructed in front yards. Your developments, your subdivisions and whatnot, most likely are going to have CC&Rs that prohibit this from occurring. It's usually your older lots, a lot of the lots along the waterfront where the house is down in the water, and then they have a lot of land upland between the road. This would allow them to build those accessory structures.
There's a bunch of that along K Street on the south side of the river.
That's also a garage.
Yes. Item 32 is notice provisions. This would require applicants under a Type 2 or a Type 3 land use permit it would require the applicants to actually do the posting of the property for public comment. We currently we do that, and we scramble around, running around, and figure out who's going to go out and post property when we have that. This makes that requirement incumbent upon the applicant to do that. This is consistent. Camas does this now, and you'll see, and it sets up a whole series of guidelines of what it needs to be on the sign, how big, and whatnot. But it would get us out of the posting business.
What happens if it doesn't happen?
Well, they're required to submit that it has happened, but we'll have to, obviously it's a small enough town, we'll drive around and find out. And hopefully it'll help with picking them up too, because there's a requirement that they be removed once the decision's been made. I'll drive around now and see signs that are still up that we just never get back to pull out of the ground, so.
So what is the Type 2 and Type 3? What is that?
A Type 2 could be like a short plat or a site plan review. A Type 3 is a land division or conditional use permit. The last one that I wanted to talk about was a new section, post-decision review. This is new language that creates an entire new section for post-decision review. And this is one where if you have a decision on a land use matter and you want to change something before you final it, currently the only way that we have to do that is you go right back through the same process. So if you did a subdivision and you want to change, or a site plan and you want to change something, and that is really not significant, but it needs to be reviewed and modified. The only way that we have to do it is to go back through the same process that we put you through in the first place. This allows us to, if it's a type 2 decision, if a site plan and they're eliminating one parking spot, it's not going below and they're kind of shrinking it up and moving it, it's no broad public health safety issues. It'd allow us to review that at a lower classification or a type 1 review. So instead of doing public notice and everything else, we can just do that administratively. Again, type 3, and there's a whole list of criteria that it's in your, it's about 3 pages worth of code that sets up how, when, and how we can do that and what needs to be submitted for it. But it's actually something that the county had for a number of years. I utilized quite a bit when I was there as well. Some of our planning commission members who have done land use permitting in the county we're very much in favor of bringing this one forward, and I think it will be a benefit to us.
I don't know how you function this long without it.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting is there was a fee established when we did it. I don't know, we looked at doing it probably 7 years ago, and we just never got to this point of, and it's only $160 to do instead of going back through a several $1,000s for a land division or something along those lines. It's only $160 to take a look at it again. So again, the recommended action for this evening on the consent agenda is to set the public hearing for June 24th at 7 p.m.
Questions for Mitch or Chief Schumacher? Okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to proposed ordinance changes regarding barking dogs. David.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, as we discussed at our last meeting, we have an item that is being workshopped this evening, and then the ordinance will be before you this evening as well. This is really a cleanup item, if you would, and it relates to provisions, maybe you could connect to that, relates to provisions in Title 8 of the Municipal Code that deal with nuisances from dogs, particularly noise nuisances, barking. There are several titles in the Municipal Code that deal with nuisances. Title 8 is one of them, and it is the only area that needs some changes. Our current enforcement practices, which take all of the different chapters of the code and titles of the code, and you take them together, are not changing and will not change as a result of any action to pass this ordinance and amend the code. I think it's very important to point that out. Our practice will stay the same. Our interpretation will stay the same. It has been our interpretation, when you read all of the different sections together, that the exemptions that will be precisely clarified here exist. And there's a long, drawn-out story about why that is the case, but it is the case. And we've operated that way, and under the advice of the attorneys have been okay. However, as we've been a little more engaged in that kind of a conversation recently, as we've been dealing with some noise complaints, the attorneys, upon further review, basically said, you know, why don't we go ahead and just tighten that up a little bit and make it more clear so that the interpretation is more readily apparent. And so what you have before you are some changes to several sections in Title 8 that basically say the provisions won't apply to the list that you see there. And it's those types of uses where you expect to have dogs, and then obviously you would expect some noise. And so if you're going to have a section of your code that allows these uses to be there, and then turn around with another section of the code that says, well, but then you can't really function, and that's the conflict, and that's what we're clarifying. So you can see that the list hopefully covers everything we need it to. Vet clinics, pounds, which would be our shelter, stores, grooming establishments, or kennels. And as long as they meet all of our other regulations, and there are some provisions around noise and different things that are still relevant. It's just that this title wouldn't be required. Same thing in this section. That same list of exemptions would be clarified here. And then similar exemption here, listing those. So it's almost identical language. Another thing that this change will do is clarify that the animals that are in these facilities aren't subject to licensing. It's not our practice to, go into the shelter or go to the pet store, or they have one, but it's once a resident, a neighbor comes into possession of an animal, then obviously the licensing requirements are. So that was just an add-on that they found, and they thought, while we're at it, let's go ahead and clarify that too. So I think the bottom line is these are intended to be clarifications. There really is no policy question in front of you. Your action tonight to pass this ordinance won't change any of our enforcement practices or any of the way that we have enforced or interpreted these provisions. However, it will, according to the attorneys, make it more precisely clear, and they think that that is a beneficial thing just moving forward so that there's no misunderstandings or confusion. And Don will be here when this item's on the agenda at your meeting later this evening if you have anything for him at that time.
When I read it, there was, given that it's at least clear to me that the whole reason to do this is absolute clarity. I read the word pounds and thought, does that mean shelters?
It does.
Okay, as long as you're perfectly satisfied that it includes shelters, I'm fine. Otherwise, I would change it to animal pounds and shelters. But
and that would be easy. That would be easy enough to do, and that might be a good clarification while we're at it.
What's the definition of pound? I mean, it is
Pounds,
isn't that a shelter?
impound.
Right. So there could be a nuance there,
exactly,
Counselor, and I think that's probably a good point.
Well, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Right now, our pound is the shelter, and the shelter is also our pound. But
right,
to say that's
they
always
could
going to be there.
I have a question. Okay, veterinary clinics, animal pounds, pet stores, dog grooming establishments, or commercial kennels. Are those only permitted in industrial or commercial zone districts?
Veterinarian clinics are allowed in commercial, but if you have any of the actual kennels are only in industrial. Yes.
But together, if you commercial and industrial.
Yes.
They would never be allowed in residential.
Exactly.
How about, are there any situations where they could abut a residential zone district?
They could. Yeah, they do actually now.
Yeah, the one Orchard Hills probably does.
Without a street.
Yes. Yeah, and it was just recently rezoned in 2011 to commercial. It was residential up to that point, but it actually abuts right next to residential.
Is dog grooming permitted as an in-home business?
We have allowed that. Yep.
What about boarding? People that want to board animals or dogs?
Yeah, the definition of kennel says if it's three or is it's four or more is that. So if they're less than the three, then they're not a kennel by our.
To follow up on Paul's question, if a dog grooming establishment's in a residential district and it's causing a lot of, do we have doggy daycare in the city like Vancouver does? I mean, that's another.
I don't know if that's a listed use. Do we?
No.
Okay, well, that's another thing to think about. A dog grooming establishment in a residential zone district might cause some noise problems. And I would actually like to limit these exemptions to industrial or commercial zone districts if there's a way of drafting it that way.
Or, Mitch, are the other provisions in the other titles that are relevant where we're not making changes, would those provisions mitigate against the concern? of one of these uses being in a residential zone?
Yeah, you're not gonna see a kennel by definition, and you're not gonna see a veterinarian clinic. Now, like I said, we have allowed, under a HOMOC, we've allowed a grooming.
And would there be any provisions in the home occupation requirements pertinent to grooming that would mitigate and give us the ability to address noise if this exemption exists in 08?
Well, we basically would end up probably not approving the HOMOC is the only way that if it's something that is such of a nuisance that we can't mitigate it.
Well, you can always-
HOMOC has to be in the house.
You can always revoke a HOMOC, and you don't really, I've gone there, you don't really want to go there.
Right.
It's not a pleasant process.
Right. The HOMOCs that, they're very limited, that they're not changing the nature of the residential. They can't be in accessory buildings, or they have to be in the house. So, you know, the only thing that if the dog barked on the way into the house, the only thing that you would have to deal with.
Okay. Well.
So the one risk potentially that could be a little bit cumbersome for us would be dog grooming establishments that are established as a home occupation.
Yeah.
And then you brought up another one, which is what about buffering or scenarios where this would be true for any commercial use that generates noise. This would essentially exempt one kind of noise, whereas all the other noises would be subject to the full body of provisions. It's a question.
Well, I mean, I want to get this resolved because of a festering situation that's going on, but I would, you know, I think there's something to think about maybe for later.
And we may be able to remedy the dog grooming one with very simple language, similar to the listing of pound, and we'll talk about it on the break and see if there's a simple remedy for that. And then the other one is a more complex issue, and probably the scope of that.
Well, I mean, I've seen them deal with, you know, putting regulations and not within 100 feet of a residential district. So if suddenly, by the way, that's the animal shelter I take my cats to, but they don't make much noise. You know, if suddenly they became a problem with some neighbors that were unhappy with the noise, we actually wouldn't have the noise protections that are in our ordinance there.
If they located there.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's one that we could come back to in the next round of updates, because I'm sure we'll have another round.
Oh, yeah.
Other questions, comments?
I just a comment. What is our noise ordinance for like the teenagers next door with a band?
How many decibels?
Where is Chief Mitchell when you need
him?
I mean, there's other kinds of noise. Is that
there are provisions.
Noises and
right.
nuisances.
Right, and they go out and they have to read the situation, and they have the ability to address that. Depends on what kind of music they're playing.
Those are covered under Title IX.
Okay. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank
You're going to stick around.
Yes.
So we're doing that tonight, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's on tonight.
Okay, we are now at that second opportunity on the agenda for anyone from the public that would like to address council. Anyone at all? Everybody shy. I have no items for you at the moment. Anything from council members? Joyce?
Well, I'm requesting time at our next workshop on June 24th for the council to discuss the option of changing our form of city government from the strong mayor system that we now have to the council manager form. This would be a discussion at our June 24th workshop and voted on at the July 8th meeting. If the vote passes the council, then the matter would go to the Washougal voters on the November 5th ballot. So I'm requesting time at the June 24th meeting for a discussion.
we can certainly put it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
I would observe that both Ridgefield and Battleground have made this change in recent history, and that Bill Ganley, presently on Battleground Council, was intimately involved in the change in Battleground, and people may want to talk to him.
I have some information I'll pass out to council and anybody. There's tons of information on the web, but I have some handouts that I'll give you this evening at the break. You can discuss it for a discussion matter.
Interesting. Yeah, I've also been doing a little bit of research as well, since Joyce and I met for coffee not too long ago, and we discussed this, and I think it's an interesting proposition. I think it has some merits, and it seems like this topic, it's funny because this topic seems to come up about every 2 years or so amongst council members, it seems like. And I've also heard some interest from the public as well in the recent past few months. So I think we should definitely bring it forward and have a discussion as a council, benefits and if there's any negatives as well. I have a call in to Mr. Ganley, or Councilmember Ganley also, and hopefully get to meet with him after the 18th. He's a little busy right now with the end of the school year and wrapping everything up. So, but I hope to get an appointment to meet with him and pick his brain a bit about this particular issue. But I think it's interesting. It's the council manager system, as far as my notes and the little bit of research that I've done, it seems to provide a more stable, less political, much more professional system of government. I think it's a great idea to definitely take a look at it and do something different in our community. I definitely like the idea of a professional city manager. So I'm in favor of it. Bringing it forward for discussion.
I can share with you, I've actually gone through a change where a city changed, did the other change from mayor or council manager to mayor council. They changed their charter. The city of 500,000 people, but there are some things you got to contemplate when you make these changes. Need to examine our code, and a lot of practicalities that need to be brought out when we do it. But I'm open to discussing it.
For the members going up to AWC, are you both going up on Tuesday?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be here on Monday.
We hadn't discussed when Jennifer and I are going together. We hadn't discussed when we were leaving.
No, we haven't discussed it
No, we haven't.
exact day or but
So I don't know.
Which day is that in? June or July?
check my
It's
calendar.
It's
It's
June
coming up here.
25th through the 28th.
That would be the 24th.
24th and 28th. No, we haven't.
It starts on the 24th?
I'm just saying, you're asking for this to come forward on the 24th. Will you both be in town on the 24th?
On the Monday of the 24th?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah, I'll be attending the
Yes.
meeting, absolutely.
Paul, are you coming back?
I will not be here. I may be able to attend by telephone, but I will be in Kennewick that Monday night.
We could FaceTime you in.
Hmm?
We could FaceTime you in.
Yeah, we haven't tested that system yet.
Look at the Wizard of Oz up there.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz.
Right.
They broadcast you on a huge screen.
Uh-huh.
Great and
That was
powerful.
wonderful.
I would love to go.
Great and powerful Oz.
Get little torches on the side of the.
Riddle me this, would you
Where are
be
the
okay
monkeys,
if,
I wanna know.
Yeah.
Joyce, would you be okay if we moved it back to the first meeting in July?
We have an August, if the council approved it to go on the ballot, it has to be approved by August 6th. So we do have a deadline. But I think that's up to the council. I mean, if they want to do that. The 24th, that would put it to the 8th.
Discussion on the 8th. vote.
Oh,
on
that
the
is- that'd be the-
22nd.
So
Yeah.
that'd be the 21st, was that the 21st,
22nd.
22nd? The
Well,
next meeting.
This is kind of a big deal.
This is a real big deal.
And I think that probably a little more discussion. I mean, if you know, Paul, I'd like you to make every effort you can to call in.
Oh, I will.
Well,
I have nothing
Paul
to-
and I both will be gone that Monday.
Okay.
And-
both of you.
And if you want to move forward on Monday, I'm fine with that. I'll just return from Kennewick on Monday and then drive back up Monday night again, so.
But so I think a couple of, you know, council, you know, 3 council
Maybe more-
meetings to get this
more
all
than-
in.
So,
Back to
so
back.
if we discussed it the Monday while everybody's gone, then we
Right.
discuss it 2 weeks later, so workshop it twice is what you're saying, and
I'm
then.
not
have
necessarily
it
saying
later.
that, I'm just saying.
I
that
would, I would like to see that. I'd like to see it come up so that we, because I haven't really thought this through. I'd like to see what the issues are, what comes up, and then that gives us another workshop to think about it, and then 2 weeks still to act on it, but July
Like 6
21st or whatever it is, really is drop dead time.
Yeah.
The council could always have a special work session or a special meeting if it was necessary for you to have the deliberative time that you need. And the only other thing I would mention is that we have 2 organizations that will provide presentations and answer questions for councils that are considering this topic, whichever way the community is considering it. MRSC is one, and they've done that numerous times for communities. They do it for councils, and they also do it for communities when it's on the ballot, usually through a league of voters. The ICMA also provides
That's the
that service. Both of those websites have information. MRSC is right in our backyard, so they're very
We
familiar
have
with
to fly someone in
Washington law.
from Atlanta, isn't that where IMLA is?
ICMA,
ICMA?
they're back east,
Yeah.
but they have folks all around.
The other thing I'm worried about is that July 8th is the FCS presentation on cost of service.
Right, it's fully.
So we have major utility presentations to do in the 2 workshops in July.
So we have the first one, yes, on July 8th. And then on, they are scheduled for their second one 1 month later on August 12th. And then a third one 2 weeks after that. However, right now we have them teed up for just basically the entire workshop time on the 8th. However, as we've done in a couple of
Right.
other meetings, we can have council discussion items on the regular agenda too, and particularly when those regular agendas aren't busy with significant policy choices.
What about our
for you.
town hall meeting?
Town hall's on the 29th. We were going to talk tonight about the 2 suggestions that we've received from the council for the for a topic, but you're meeting on the 29th as well. I know MRSC, excuse me,
Go ahead,
if you're interested in that, only would pursue that if you're interested in it. I'm sure they need a little bit of notice so that they can get the team together to come and talk to you.
Could we have a special meeting, because we do have a lot of important things we're discussing, could have a special meeting so that we are discussing it with council 2 times, and maybe one time be a special meeting, so we're not with other agenda items.
What was the drop dead deadline again?
August 6th.
8/6.
Right, so your last regular meeting,
Connie Jo, as a issue, the drafting of this, the legal hoops,
Oh, yeah.
you can make a mistake, and so it's well worth
Oh, I get it.
leaving yourself a chance to clean up a mistake.
Sure. I'm just asking because I'm going to be in India, and I'm leaving on June 26th. I return July 8th, so I would be coming from Seattle, but I could probably snore on the phone after 24 hours of flying. Well, but I just wanted to know what our deadline was.
Well, and you're coming up against one of my biggest concerns in this whole conversation, you're talking about potentially changing the form of government in the city of Washougal and making a decision to put that to the voters within a 60-day period. Councilman Boker's correct. This is a big deal. This isn't a light issue. Your form of governance is what compels us to do everything that we do, no matter which facet of it you're looking at.
Well,
I think it's important that we still have the discussion. If we run out of time, then we run out of time.
we can kick it over to the 2014 if it got to that point, but,
Sure.
or 2015. I'm open to special meetings if that would help. I actually think it should be a discussion at our town hall meeting. I really want to hear what the public thinks about it. That's really important to me. So if we need to carve out an extra special meeting, that's fine.
I think it would be good to have it as an agenda item at the town hall meeting as well. I don't know how many other items. You said only 2 more?
We have 2 suggestions that had been made. The one was made the first time we talked about it at our last meeting. I think a couple councilors talked about possibly the budget. We do have town halls that are specifically set up for the budget, but they are later. And then
So this would be kind
you
of an
suggest,
overview?
yeah, it
of
was
the
going to
budget,
be.
just have an update, mid-year?
No.
No, we were thinking based on what we had, at least what we were interpreting from the comments of the couple councilors was maybe a walkthrough to maybe particularly for the benefit of some of the newer members, just why is it set up the way it is, and
What are the different sections? What are the different line items?
what are these
That's not
different
gonna be
line
short.
items for?
Quick.
And it would have to be, we'd have to try to get that into a 45 to 50-minute presentation that Jennifer would do and I would do. That's what we were thinking, unless we heard, interpreted incorrectly what was the desire. The other suggestion you made, Counselor, about something that's consistent with one of the strategies in the strategic plan around actively promoting tourism and actively promoting Washougal as a destination. And it sounds like we have now 2 perennial activities that are bigger in nature that are occurring out at the track. Obviously, there's always the motocross, but the Spartan race looks like it's going to start showing up, hopefully. So that was just, I think, inspiration to think about, well, maybe we could talk about something like that and try to see, what initiatives we might undertake. The council does have some funding that you appropriated for yourselves for strategic planning initiatives. It was $20,000 for this year, so maybe that's an area that you would want to make an investment in. You're not limited to one topic necessarily. I think this is a work in progress, these town halls. When you initially established them, it was going to start off really open-ended as an opportunity for the community to engage you in a more informal setting. And I think as you talked that through, you thought it might be good to have sort of a starter or a kickoff topic, at least, that might generate interest. Mm-hmm. That if you just left it open, it might not generate as much interest as having a starter topic. So I think that's kind of the basis for why you did that.
We're trying to limit them to approximately 2 hours? That's 2 hours.
2 to 3, I thought.
Well, let me make a suggestion. June 29th is the day before the last day of the quarter. So we have another quarter coming up right after that. And I'm not suggesting we have another town hall on July 7th. But, we could defer the budget discussion to probably September when school's back in session.
I agree.
And that's actually closer to the time it's going to be more pertinent.
Mine, we're just trying to be responsive to council that said you want it earlier, and you want to start the budget in June. So.
A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, says Ralph Waldo Emerson. So.
Well, that doesn't preclude us from discussing budget during a workshop or
council
Sure.
meeting. We can still have presentations coming forward
Emerson
as we
Morgan.
go through
Oh, yeah.
your budget happenings here at the city. As you start, and however early.
Oh, we started.
Okay.
We started.
You've already got things in the works that potentially could come forward as presentations during regular workshops or council meetings. If we happen to have a light day, when maybe there aren't a lot of other presentations or items that we're going through.
I'm just saying, as we start talking about moving budget discussions into September, up to this point, you've asked for the budget discussions earlier.
Yes, but I really did not think that that was gonna be a town hall issue. Town hall issue is, let's talk to the citizens, and let's have the citizens come back and talk to us. Not have somebody come in and give city council a course on something, you know?
It is certainly intended for yourselves.
Right.
The
Well, it was
process
just-
we were gonna go
yeah.
through, it is certainly intended for the public
Sounds
as
like a
well.
workshop.
I think we
It
heard
kinda
loud and
does,
clear,
doesn't it, Connie?
I think we heard loud and clear in those discussions that it is not only the council that would like to know more about the budget that you pass, but the residents as well. I heard that a number of times, so.
I personally think, having spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in budget training and budget meetings, that it really doesn't work to try to do it all in one sitting. After 50 minutes, I'm done. And so it really makes sense to do it in smaller bites. Kind of like what you're talking about, that we do, half an hour, 40 minutes one night, and then do, especially if we're talking about council, that it really makes sense to do this in chunks that are small enough that you can chew them up.
That's why we're talking a 45-minute presentation.
Yeah, maybe workshops, maybe we add special sessions, but I'm not, I can do it, but boy, sitting through 3 hours on budget is, certainly by 90 minutes into it, your mind is numb and you're not there with it anymore.
Okay, at this point, we're just beyond 6:30. Let's go ahead and hold other council comments until the regular meeting itself. We'll go ahead and adjourn the workshop and be back here at 7 o'clock.